Welcome to Lady Justice, Women of the Court, a podcast hosted by Women State Supreme Court Justices and produced in partnership with the National Center for State Courts. In each episode, our hosts Justice Rhonda Wood of Arkansas and Justice Beth Walker of West Virginia discuss the law and its real-world implications for listeners of all ages. Join us for another insightful and inspiring conversation.
Welcome back to Lady Justice, Women of the Court, a podcast in partnership with the National Center for State Courts. I'm Justice Beth Walker of the Supreme Court of Appeals of West Virginia, and I'm here, as always, with my friend and podcast partner, Arkansas Justice Rhonda Wood. When this episode comes out, we'll be well into the holiday season. I can almost hear the jingle bells in the background. So I'll ask you, Rhonda, are your Christmas decorations up?
Well, so they're not up as of this recording, but they will be up when it's released because they are always up immediately after Thanksgiving. Not before, we're not one of those people, but I kind of hold my whole family hostage once they show up for Thanksgiving so that they have to stay and help decorate and put them all up. So I don't know about you, Beth. We haven't actually talked about that. That may be a lightning round question down the road.
Yeah, we may make it. We have a strict rule in our house that Mr. Walker sticks with, which is there are no Christmas decorations permitted until Santa Claus reaches Herald Square at the end of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And that is the official start for my husband of Christmas. And so it's been hard because Christmas keeps moving back and things are in the store, but we stick with the end of the Macy's Day Parade as the beginning of Christmas season. Anyway, maybe that is a good lightning round question in the future, or maybe we've already answered it. But today's topic, getting back on track, is in honor of the anniversary this week of the passing of Justice Sandra Day O'Connor just a year ago. So, of course, we're going to talk about something she was passionate about, and that is civics education. And passionate is an understatement. She personally, in my view, changed the face of civics education and what courts do. Rhonda and I constantly talk about the importance of the public knowing what we do in state courts. And that's, of course, one of the reasons we started and keep doing this podcast. The judicial branch of government is arguably the least understood of all three, and we are on a two-woman mission to change that. In fact, both of our courts opened new court education facilities in the past year, and we'll talk more about that as we get into this episode. And the good news is we are not alone in our quest. Many of our peers at other state courts are making sure folks know more about how state courts serve the public every day. And our friends at the National Center for State Courts have prioritized this topic and are challenging leaders in state courts across the country to look beyond civics education, take it up a notch, I guess, if you will, and recognize that the public's understanding of what we do in state courts is essential to maintaining public trust and confidence in our branch. This is an incredibly important point. We've talked about it before, and we will keep talking about it because we cannot talk about it enough. And today we have a wonderful special guest for this conversation, and that is Doris J. Huffman, the Executive Director of the Nebraska State Bar Foundation. I met Doris earlier this year at a luncheon where she accepted, on behalf of the foundation, the Sandra Day O'Connor Award for the Advancement of Civics Education. This prestigious annual award honors an organization, court, or individuals who've promoted, inspired, improved, or led an innovation or accomplishment in the field of civics education relating to the justice system. So I'm proud to introduce you to Doris, who has led the Nebraska State Bar Foundation for, wait for it, 30 years. She is a tireless leader who truly exemplifies a commitment to public service and our profession. Doris, welcome to the Lady Justice Podcast, and congratulations again on the Sandra Day O'Connor Award. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us why you're so passionate about what you do?
Sure. Thanks, Beth. As you mentioned, I've been with the Bar Foundation for over 30 years. And during that time, as you can imagine, I have seen lots of changes. When I first started, we were a grant-making organization, And then we moved to a programmatic organization where we offered civic education programs. I truly love working with teachers and kids, especially the students. They energize me, but also the interaction of members of the judiciary and attorneys. I couldn't offer these programs without their support. And I would say, yes, why I'm passionate, it's because I truly believe in an educated citizenry. And one way to accomplish that is to offer the educational programs for both teachers and students.
And Doris, I have to say that, we have a bar foundation in Arkansas as well. And they're great. So I'm not going to, not give them credit and props, but I checked out your website and it's phenomenal. And the depth and the resources available on it are just phenomenal. And we will make sure and drop a link to it for our listeners. But the extent of what you do is really sort of unparalleled. So I really want to commend you on that. And I can see why you won awards and been recognized. But we do a mock trial program, and if you want to talk a little bit more about what you do for mock trial specifically in Nebraska.
Sure. With mock trial, we have a case committee that writes an original problem every year. It's a group of attorneys and a retired judge. It's a lot of fun. I never know where the case is going to end up when we start. And Nebraska, as you know, because we have a huge geographic area, we have broken it down into 10 regions. And each region, we have a sitting judge, at least one, who serves as a regional coordinator along with either another judge or an attorney. And they're responsible for organizing the regional competition, which includes recruiting volunteers, determining convenient dates when the teams can compete. And then at the conclusion of that competition, they will get in contact with the foundation office and say, here's the team that's advancing to state. So there's a lot of work with local volunteers, and I really appreciate everything that they do. The other thing I will add about mock trial is we have added a student news reporter contest. And so we're bringing in a different group of kids. We started with like 1 or 2 students. And last year, I believe we had 5 or 6 that competed at state. And we bring in a media representative so they can actually meet somebody who's gone through the journalism college, plus a judge or an attorney. And that way they can learn about the courts. So that's our mock trial program in a nutshell.
That is, starting from where you are generating an original case every year. I mean, that's really impressive. How many students roughly participate in locally and then try to make it to state?
Oh gosh, I have to think of the number of teams. I think we had 59 to 60 teams last year. So you take that times roughly up to 9 students per team. So we have quite a few that compete. I will say, due to the pandemic, we did mock trial via Zoom. So we limited schools to only have 2 teams. We're still in that process of rebuilding. We now allow schools to have up to 4 mock trial teams. I just think it's going to take a little bit.
Rhonda, did you have a follow-up question too? I mean, that's an incredible program to do every year.
It is. I really love the journalism piece, and that makes me think of Claire, our, journalism future lawyer that we had a young high school student on here. But I can't think of a better avenue to sort of expose, to make it sort of more fulsome. I would love to hear more. So I'll have to reach out to you and find out more about that, and maybe encourage Arkansas to look into that. But that was exciting to hear about.
Doris, tell me where, that's impressive also that you convince, and they probably don't take much convincing. It sounds like an amazing program. Local judges to sort of lead things in the regions. Where do they hold the competitions? Are they in actual courtrooms? Are they in schools? Is there a combination? How does that work?
Typically, they're in the local courthouse. So that way students actually get to walk into a courthouse. They get to usually meet a sitting judge, if not more than one. And it just makes them familiar, and so that they're not maybe as apprehensive about a courthouse. They learn about the whole process. And yeah, I mean, it's a great experience for the kids.
Well, I can't underline more that point you made, which is, if you can find opportunities to make a courthouse a place where anyone, particularly children, feel like something good happens as opposed to something difficult or terrible. That's a nuance of civics education that sometimes you just don't appreciate. And I can imagine that has evolved over time in Nebraska.
It has.
And the other reason I asked you about where the mock trials take place is I'm going to ask Rhonda to tell us a little bit about the new Arkansas education facility. And to say it is an education facility is probably to not give it enough credit, but I got to visit last year when I was in Little Rock. And it was under construction, and now it's open. And I know one of its features is a mock trial room available for students from all around Arkansas. So, Rhonda, tell us more about your center in Arkansas.
Yeah, so it was pretty exciting. We did a bond refinancing. We are in a standalone building we have a Justice building. And so it's roughly $17 million addition. So that kind of shows the scope of it. But we built conference rooms for teaching, for bringing students over. We have interactive exhibits, actually beyond more, thinking of civics as a whole. So it's about all three branches of government, about the voting process, definitely, focus on the judiciary. But we did add a pretty large mock trial courtroom that probably, I would say, holds at least 50. And I really like the concept that we can walk students through and they could utilize it. We'll have some standing. We're developing mock sort of trials depending on the age group that comes through that they can, utilize and work with. And we hired a former teacher to sort of run that wing, but that we can actually show them, like, this is the trial court, and then you progress to the, appellate court, and they can walk visually, physically from a trial court into an appellate court, courtroom. So yeah, we're really excited about it. Opened in September. And so Beth, you have to come back now. And Doris,
apparently, have there been some mock trials? Has it?
So as a recording, no, because we haven't approved sort of the process, but we have had lots of schools through the building already. And it's so exciting in the pictures and watching them interactively, participate in we have some iCivics voting and everything. It's really exciting. So, and Doris, you're welcome as well.
Well, hats off to you and everyone at the Arkansas Supreme Court, because I know it was really a project that the court as a whole embraced. I mean, I know you were very excited about it, but so was your court administrator and the entire court. And that's really what it takes. I'm sure, Doris, that's been your experience in Nebraska as well. When you have it, and with your volunteer judges, when you have the judiciary engaged and involved with students and sort of getting over that feeling like, well, we can't talk to people. A lot of really good things happen. So now I want to go back to Doris and ask a question. And another one of the civics education programs of the many, Rhonda mentioned this on your website. You folks are not just talking about civics, you are doing real programs, and it's impressive. But one of the programs that was highlighted when you won the Sandra Day O'Connor Award is your Bench Media Committee, which I understand from reading and listening is designed to increase public awareness of the legal system through open dialogue with the news media. And I know from firsthand experience, again, not calling anybody out in West Virginia, many state bars talk about this issue, but it appears that your organization is actually doing it and taking action in Nebraska. Can you tell us how the Bench Media Committee works and give us an example or two of what it does?
Sure. The Bench Media Committee, as you can guess, it's a collaboration of members of the judiciary, both federal and state, plus attorneys and media representatives statewide. We meet and discuss any challenges that face the profession. I will tell you, when we first started meeting, it was a little awkward. There were some lines that were drawn in the sand, as I would say. But over the years, there's been a level of trust that's developed, and we have built working relationships and also had the opportunity to resolve issues. One example is when we got expanded media in the courts, there were some challenges with the media understanding why wasn't my request accepted, or why did I have to change something? And one of the judges on our committee, she just said, listen, when I'm getting ready for trial, here's what I'm thinking about. So if you could come before this and let's get all the little details figured out, then I can focus on, what's before me and not worry about the camera over here or anyone else from the media. So I think just the media understanding, the judge has a lot on his or her mind. And it's not that they're ignoring the media, it's they're concerned about the people before them. We also have had, and this is just an ongoing process we're learning, we've had attorney members and retired judges who have responded in writing to misinformation about the courts, possibly how it functions or about court proceedings. We really try to stress the process. I think one of our bigger challenges, and we just had a situation recently where a judge was, there were comments that were not flattering that were made on social media. And it was an organization and the judge's picture was on it. And we ended up having a retired judge get on social media and respond to this. We had another attorney explain the process. This is why the judge's hands were tied. And it was because of the laws. It was because of the statutes. And so I think just trying to educate through social media, from my perspective, I think it's really hard because that is so fast paced and it is moving and people are posting. And from my perspective, I think it's hard to keep up. I would say in that particular example, I felt that we were pretty successful. I don't know that we changed minds, but at least we got information out there so people could read it, members of the public and members of that organization. So those are a couple of examples I would give you.
I think that's really fascinating. We've tried that in Arkansas, just different with trying to respond to like unfair criticisms during maybe election years, but we've never had it last, if that makes sense. So a little committee will be formed, but it may last for 6 months and it's never had longevity. So how long has yours been going on, if I can ask, Doris?
The bench meeting has been going on since 2016, when we formally included the media, this kind of subcommittee of retired and judges and attorneys, maybe 5 years or so. And it's kind of evolved. We've had people that have cycled on and cycled off. So I understand that challenge. It's like to get that commitment can be daunting, and it also depends on the subject matter. Does
Sure.
that person, that attorney, have that expertise? Do they feel comfortable answering or responding to those criticisms?
And
Oh, that's
if I
great.
don't, can I ask just a question about the administration of it? Because, again, it's easy to talk about it, but, to organize and do you take the lead as the executive director? Is there a person on the bench media committee who kind of responds to these things? Is it kind of organic and it just sort of happens? Give me an idea of that, because that's the trick, is really being organized enough to respond in real time in a meaningful way.
Um, it has happened in a couple different ways. I don't necessarily take the lead. A lot of times, either I'll have a judge email me, or Janet Bancroft, the public information officer, she will have gotten an email and say, hey, we need to get an attorney. We've got to respond to this. So it kind of happens in different ways. We don't have a set way that we respond. And part of it's up to, if it is a criticism of the judge, it's up to whether that judge wants anyone to respond. So there's that challenge too.
Well, I commend you for that. I mean, that's, if you think about it, you said that the media since 2016, that's almost a decade. So that shows that there's a commitment by other stakeholders than just your foundation. So that tells me you're pretty successful with what you're doing there. As you mentioned, I want to give you some shout out, Beth, in West Virginia, because you've mentioned Arkansas, but I know West Virginia, that when you were chief, one of your goals as chief was to also have a judicial learning center. And likewise, you sort of, when I was there, you showed me where it was going to be, but it was not established yet. And so now I have a reason to come back, but besides seeing you. But if you want to, can you tell me a little bit about, did you accomplish that during your tenure, and what did you do?
We did. We opened it in November of my 1 year as chief. Of course, in West Virginia, as a reminder to listeners, we alternate our chief justice each year. So you really have to be well prepared if you want to get a project done, and begin before you start your year so that it can get done. And that's exactly what we did. We did it just a little differently than Arkansas. Every state is different. Our court is in the capital. And so there was not an option to add things or add wings or anything. We converted 2 spaces, one of which was the attorney conference room outside the courtroom. Sorry, lawyers. There's no place for you to hang out before the arguments anymore, but we schedule our arguments now, so you know exactly when your argument's going to start, so you don't really need the conference room anymore. So we stole that room, and we used it, which was connected to an office that was the public information office from many years ago, literally where the media would go to get the paper copies of the opinions when they came out before the internet and everything else. So there were 2 rooms that weren't as necessary as they used to be. And so we worked with a museum type consultant to design very efficient use of small space in order to create a center where students can come and, using mostly interactive exhibits, learn about our court system. There's a couple of screens where they can walk how a case goes through the court system, from magistrate court all the way through, with pictures of what the courts look like. And they can choose kind of the path. Do you want to appeal? There's another couple of interactive screens where the students can listen to little blips of testimony and be the judge in a case. Simple cases, just as an example. But then we also have, besides the high-tech exhibits, panels on the wall. And my favorite, which I fully admit that I stole from seeing the Learning Center in Michigan when I visited there, we have little lockers, replica lockers, and it has a legal question on the front of the locker, like, can the school search your locker? And when you open the little locker, it on the inside is printed a short explanation of one of our Supreme Court cases that ruled on when a school can look in the students' lockers. So we have a few little lockers that do search and seizure kind of stuff. But anyway, those are just some examples. It's a really fun exhibit, and it's accomplished not only making our court better at educating, but also finally, at long last, we have never been on the Capitol tour at the court because there was never anything to see. Our courtroom was locked. It's opened when people want to stop by and see it, but was never open just all the time. Now we are on the Capitol tour, which was really important to a number of us, actually, to highlight what we do in the judicial branch. And I know that's a long answer, but we worked really hard on this, and we're super proud of it. And it is, people come in every day. We have, for those of you who haven't driven through Charleston, West Virginia, it's kind of 2 interstates go through Charleston, and it's a big gold dome. And we get actually a lot of people who just stop by and are curious what's in this building. And so we get children, we get adults who just maybe will learn a thing or two about courts when they stop by. So that's what we are doing in West Virginia. So thank you for asking me about it. Do you have any follow-up questions?
It makes me want to pick up the phone and call and say, we need a locker, because that sounds like a fabulous, and as you're saying that, it makes me want to put like a car door, and like a house door, and it makes me want to, and then I think that like this beautiful building that's very sort of luxe and, modern, that I'm sure their eyes rolling about, having this, Justice Wood called and wants a locker.
She wants a locker.
and a
I'm sure they would love it.
Bunker.
My favorite story about the Learning Center is, real quick, let me look and see. We're not too terrible on time. Is we tried to create something for even the little people to find interesting. And so we have these little scales, they're wooden, and we have little wooden blocks, and the little blocks have words on them like law or evidence or witnesses. And so, the kids can just try to balance the scales. And it's just an illustration of the scales of justice, of course. And my favorite story about the wooden scales is my colleague, Justice Haley Bunn. Her young daughter was playing with the scales and trying to get them to balance, and said, "Mommy, it is really hard to get these scales to balance." And Justice Bunn said, yes, it is. It is hard. And so maybe that's something that gets conveyed. But that is our wonderful Learning Center. Thanks for asking about it and letting me promote. It was a very collaborative effort. We met via Zoom every 2 weeks for a year to manage that project. So a lot of people were involved, and it turned out really great. And now we're working more with teachers to sort of create content that students can use before they come to prepare and get educated. So I'm curious, Doris, I want to go back to you because you are in a really unique position to answer this question. You are a professional who has run the Nebraska State Bar Foundation for these 30 years. You have a master's degree in nonprofit management. It sounds like you have whipped these lawyers and judges into shape over time, because as I understand it, unless I misread, I Googled you to try to get your bio, but I don't think you're a lawyer. But even if you are, in all your work with judges and lawyers and educators and media and the public about how do we educate the public about what happens in the courts, what do you think is the most common misperception that the public has about our court system?
I think probably that the courts can solve every issue. And I probably come at this from a little different perspective. I think about how, in my opinion, how we need civil discourse And we need this among neighbors, colleagues, and just the general public. And sometimes you see lawsuits that, in my mind, I would consider somewhat frivolous. It isn't to that person that filed it. But I just wonder if the public doesn't understand the parameters the court has. They have to follow the laws, the statutes, and who makes those? The legislature. That, these three branches all work together: executive, judicial, and the legislature. And, the courts do have some constraints on some things. So I think I'm fortunate the volunteers in Nebraska are willing to meet, whether it's with a classroom, meet with the media. We recently, and I'm going to digress just a little bit, we had an on-air training for like 7 judges and 7 attorneys, because we had heard from the media representatives. Yeah, it's great. We can put up a piece of paper and show on television, but guess what? We actually want a person to answer questions. And so we had a professional come in, train these people, and now this particular on-air committee, we're trying to meet quarterly. That's a whole nother thing that we're doing. But we've had them get engaged and help us answer some of these unfair criticism. So it's evolving. We're learning as we go, is what I would tell you. I don't know if that answered your question or not. I kind of rambled a little bit, but I think it kind of all ties together.
Well, it absolutely did. And boy, what another cool thing, the on-air committee, who, a trained group of people who are available to give interviews, because you're right, the public, we're all accustomed to scrolling through reels and videos and watching live events as opposed to reading. And that's just a powerful tool. How do you don't have to talk about Nebraska judges. You can just tell Rhonda and I, how could we as judges, based on your experience, communicate better with the public? What's a thing or two that you see that judges miss sometimes? Besides legalese, I know.
Well, right. Bringing it down to that, I'll say 5th grade level, right? Keeping it simple, I think. Maybe using analogies that the students can relate to, or even the general public. I guess those would be a couple of things that I can think of right off the top of my head. I think just really being engaged and being willing to talk to people, having that transparency. We're not scary. We're approachable. We would love to talk to you about the courts. We'd love to talk to you about the legal system. That's all really important.
Yeah, and I saw that you, it looks like from your website that you do a lot of effort about trying to get judges out to schools, and then likewise bringing the students to the courts as well. And I agree with you that I think that they it's easy to either demonize or criticize someone that you haven't met, right? And haven't sort of interacted with personally. So the more that I think judges sort of leave their office and interact, the more the public sort of understands that we're just normal people. And that's really why Beth and I do this, and have done this for 5 years. Is one, we are state court proponents, but also we just want people to know we're normal and average people that make mistakes sometimes and live everyday lives on top of having these really cool jobs.
Right.
Well, there is so much work you're doing, Doris, that time limits us from talking about all of it. We didn't even get a chance to talk about, for example, your amazing jury orientation video. I saw that was just done in the last few years, and it is great. If I can figure out a way to steal it and just somehow get someone to say West Virginia instead of Nebraska in the video, I may do that because it's a great explanation, actually. So Rhonda, if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. I have no doubt that the late Justice Sandra Day O'Connor would approve of everything that you've done, and you and I know it's not just you, but you are certainly the driving force. You and everyone in Nebraska are so well deserving of this award, and thank you for what you do on behalf of state courts. As Rhonda said, we are cheerleaders and advocates, and love talking about state courts. So you are helping getting that done in Nebraska in just such an exemplary way. We hope that perhaps West Virginia and Arkansas, maybe some other states, will follow your example, because you're doing a great job. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I truly love my job, and I enjoy working with the diverse groups of people: teachers, students, judges, attorneys. So it's kind of the whole gamut. And that's what makes it fun.
Well, you're clearly having a good time. So we're so glad you could join us for this podcast episode to talk about civics education and more. And you've also agreed, we think, to do the lightning round with us. And this is the part of the podcast when we give short answers to a few questions that may or may not have anything to do with today's topic. We appreciate your willingness to play along. And so we will answer each question in this order. We'll start with Rhonda, and then you, Doris, and then me. And the first question, number 1 of our lightning round, is what is your favorite Christmas cookie or other holiday treat?
So I will go with other holiday treat, and I can't choose even that, but my dad makes the best homemade fudge. And he makes like the variety. He does everything from peanut butter, chocolate, divinity, everything. And that is my favorite. He did teach me how a few years ago, but it is a lot of work. So I prefer it made by Dad. What about you, Beth?
No, let's go Doris.
Doris. I'm sorry, Doris.
Okay. Well, I'm like you, Rhonda. I love chocolate. So fudge and peanut brittle. Those are like 2 of my all-time favorites.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to be consistent with the theme, because every year at the holiday season, I make Buckeyes, which reveals my Ohio State roots. And of course, those are for other people, little peanut butter balls dipped in chocolate. So, and they look exactly like a Buckeye. So that's why I make them. Have you had them before, Rhonda?
I've never even heard that they were called. I did not know this. The big Ohio. So they're Buckeyes. They're peanut butter dipped in chocolate.
Yes.
It sounds great.
I will send you some.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe we haven't talked about Buckeyes. This is alarming.
We'll have to exchange, and I'll have to send you some fudge. So
perfect. Okay, Doris, I'll send you some Buckeyes too.
Okay.
Especially, I know you like fudge.
Okay, question number 2. In the town where you live, what's the most common restaurant where you take guests when they visit? Or, I guess I'm on a food theme. I must have been hungry when I wrote these questions. Or what restaurant do you like to recommend to visitors when they ask for a recommendation in your town? Rhonda, you go first.
Oh boy. Usually if we're going to dinner, it's Mike's Place. It's sort of a steakhouse, locally owned, with like a Louisiana flair. So how about you, Doris?
I'm the same. I do locally owned. I would do Billy's Restaurant, Venue, or Dish. So they're all fabulous.
And that is in Lincoln?
That's in Lincoln.
All right. There you go, listeners. When you're in Lincoln, Nebraska, that is where you should go. And when you're in Charleston, West Virginia, I would take you, or you should go to 1010 Bridge. We're so proud of our locally grown, so to speak, chef who is recently won the James Beard Award for our region. And so 1010 Bridge. Question number 3. This one might be hard. What is the most meaningful volunteer work you have ever done? Rhonda.
That is hard. I decided to go with in the early 2000, I worked on sort of the founding committee for an interfaith medical and dental clinic in my hometown, for people that didn't have health and dental care. So I think that was, seeing that come to fruition was the most rewarding. How about you, Doris?
For me, I have volunteered at a soup kitchen here in Lincoln, and it makes me thankful and appreciate everything I have when I see some of the clientele that comes through. So it's been very rewarding.
And mine is my time for several years, actually, on the local board of directors for Girl Scouts of Black Diamond Council. I am a lifelong Girl Scout, and I loved everything about that. Except as an adult, you don't get to sell cookies. You just buy them. But no, all seriousness, I'm a big Girl Scout, so that's mine. And question number 4, if you won, and let's set aside the tax implications. Let's not get all caught up in that for a minute, okay? If you just won and you didn't have to pay taxes on an all expense paid airline ticket to anywhere in the world, where would you go, Rhonda?
So right now, the bucket list is I really want to go to Wigtown, Scotland. It is the book town, like headquarters for the world. And that's what they're known for. There's a infamous, I guess, bookstore there. There's bookstores everywhere. And they have a VRBO where you stay above the bookstore and you get to run the bookstore for a week. That is like on my bucket list. So that's where I'm going, Beth.
Man, let me know when you go. That sounds pretty impressive.
Doris, I have a list of friends that want to go with me because my husband doesn't want to. Anyway, so Doris, how about you? Where do you want to go?
I would go to Bali. The white sand beaches and the turquoise water, just chilling. All the pictures I've seen just look phenomenal. I think I could really relax there and just have a great time.
Do you get what you would have to get one of those little huts over the water?
I would.
Because that's on my bucket list too someday. Yeah. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but
me too. That's the dream.
And that's a great one. Good going, Doris. Another one that I have, and I don't think it's going to probably work out in real life, but man, if I won the ticket, I want to see the Galapagos Islands. I want to see the turtles. I don't know why. I'm just curious. I think it would be cool. And so that's mine. Galapagos, which means you fly to South America. It's kind of complicated, but it sounds like a fun trip.
Hey,
so with that,
books, beaches, it's good.
And with that, wandering into things that have nothing to do with civics education, I will bring us back and say this concludes another episode of Lady Justice Women of the Court. Thanks again to our wonderful and fun guest, Doris Huffman, Executive Director of the Nebraska Bar Foundation. It was so much fun to hear about what you do and to get to know you a little better. So thanks for being here. And special thanks, as always, to our great friends at the National Center for State Courts for partnering with us on this podcast's mission to educate and inform about how state courts work and how important they are. Rhonda and I will be back again soon with another episode. So in the meantime, please follow us on social media and subscribe or follow Lady Justice using your favorite podcast app.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Lady Justice, Women of the Court. To learn more about the work of our nation's state courts, visit the National Center for State Courts online at ncsc.org. Follow Lady Justice, Women of the Court on social media and subscribe to the show on podcast platforms to receive notifications about new episodes.